This week, after several weeks of speculation, it was confirmed that the original Muppet Show is coming back for a 50th anniversary special in 2026. A special that's planned to be a backdoor pilot for a full Muppet Show revival. I think this is very interesting and was kind of the inevitable trajectory that the Muppets have been on for the past few years. Since the 2011 Muppet movie, Muppet Media has put a very heavy focus on referencing the original Muppet Show, featuring its characters, its sketches, and its iconography more and more. Of course, there's the 2011 movie and Muppets Most Wanted, which are easily the biggest examples of this, but we've also seen Muppet Show sketches return in several other places, including the finale of the ABC Muppet Show, the Muppet Babies reboot, the Muppet Live shows from a few years ago, which are basically just live Muppet shows. They even basically incorporated an At the Dance sketch into the Muppets Haunted Mansion special. But easily the most obscure of these Muppet Show sketch returns is the Pigs in Space web series, which ran for only 2 episodes in 2016 and was cancelled because of a Star Wars parody. Yeah, this gets pretty weird. Hello everybody, and welcome back to Mupptown Funk. I'm your host Ty, as always. Welcome back to Muppet History Lesson, the series where we discuss obscure Muppet history. I'm very excited because today I'm making good on a video I promised I'd make 2 years ago now, which is crazy. You see, 2 years ago, I covered Pigs in Space Deep Dish 9. Deep Dish 9 was a Pigs in Space sketch that ran on the Muppet Show's successor, Muppets Tonight, in the 90s. It only had a few different segments, and on my video about it, I broke down these sketches and talked about the strange attempt to bring back Pigs in Space here, using a brand new cast save for Piggy, promoting it as the next generation of Pigs in Space, a la Star Trek. It's a very interesting story, and while it isn't required viewing for this video, I suggest you check it out after watching this if you're a big Pigs in Space fan. It's a video that I'm still very proud of. I think it's a pretty fun one. Anyway, all you need to know for this video is what you probably already do know about Pigs in Space. Pigs in Space is a Muppet Show sketch that started in the 2nd season of the Muppet Show and ran all throughout. It features Miss Piggy, Captain Link Hogthrob, and Dr. Julius Strangepork on their spaceship, the Swine Trek, going across space and encountering all sorts of insane things. Usually, the incompetence of the 3 pigs, mixed with whatever weird sci-fi thing is going on their ship, gives the sketches most of their comedy. When the Muppet Show ended, of course, Pigs in Space did as well, but the characters created for it continue to appear over the following years, especially Link Hogthrob, who, over the course of the Muppet Show, had expanded far beyond just Pigs in Space, and appeared in several other Muppet Show sketches and different Muppet productions. Following Jim Henson's passing, Link would stop making appearances for the most part, save for a few non-speaking cameos in the 90s, and vocal appearances in some video games in the 2000s, after he was recast to Steve Whitmire. Link really made his big comeback in the 2011 movie, where he rejoined the Muppet Show cast and appeared in the Jack Black Barbershop Quartet segment. Since then, he's gone on to make semi-regular appearances in Muppet Media, about as regular as you'd expect a Link to show up. He has appeared, now portrayed by Peter Linz, following the firing of Steve Whitmire. Strangepork, meanwhile, was never really used all that much outside of Pigs in Space. He made a few sporadic appearances here or there, but much like Link, his bigger return was in the 2011 movie, albeit he didn't speak there, he was just there in the Muppet Ensemble. The 3rd member of Pigs in Space is Miss Piggy, who I don't really need to mention because you already know her. You guys hear that? Okay, fine, I'll talk about Miss Piggy. Miss Piggy was the first mate of the Swine Trek in Pigs in Space, and she's wonderful and great and well-loved. Please don't hurt me again, Miss Piggy, thank you. Anyway, let's jump to 2015. At D23 this year, Steve Whitmire mentions that he and the Muppet team have filmed 4 or 5 new Pigs in Space segments set to be released online to coincide with the return of Star Wars to theaters. With The Force Awakens releasing and being a huge deal, they wanted to do a sort of Muppet thing to coincide with that, so they decided to bring back Pigs in Space. But these sketches didn't end up releasing on YouTube until a year and a half later, in December of 2016. And when they did, no, they were not billed as a Rogue One tie-in. In fact, there was nothing Star Wars related about them at all. They were just new Pigs in Space segments. Actually, the first of these new sketches was a parody of a different iconic 70s sci-fi franchise, Alien. Yeah, the first new Pigs in Space episode was an Alien parody. Called Alien, Look Who's Coming to Dinner, this episode released on December 9th, 2016 on the Muppets YouTube channel, and was promoted as the first new Pigs in Space episode in over 20 years. I was gonna say I appreciate them remembering Deep Dish 9, but I don't think they did. The last Deep Dish 9 sketch aired in like 1998, which was, not 20 years. That's less than 20 years between that and 2016. Anyway, into the episode itself. We start with a brand new intro with a new Pigs in Space logo made in CGI. The swine trek is also depicted in CGI, and we see it flying past the screen. The narrator introduces the 3 cast members as their heads float by, which is pretty interesting to see, as this was only done in Season 2 of the original Muppet Show. After Season 2, they dropped this intro concept and did a much shorter one, but here in the web series, they decided to bring it back. We pan down to the inside of the ship, where a squid is sitting on Link's face. That's how you know this is already going to be quality content. Obviously, the squid is in place of the facehuggers from Alien. The squid gets up and leaves, and Miss Piggy explains how Link got into this situation, which is easily one of the strangest explanations I've ever heard for anything ever, and really doesn't tell us anything at all.
So you went out with someone, ate some bad eggs, and then a multi-armed weirdo glued itself to your face for a few hours.
We go into a few other jokes about Piggy and Link and a time they apparently had to share an oxygen supply before Link starts feeling a rumbling in his stomach. And then we start seeing a rumbling in Link's stomach. Now may be a good time to establish that this sketch is really gross. Pepe the King Prawn comes shooting out of Link's stomach, covered in weird gray guts. He is, of course, a parody of the chest bursters from Alien, but he's fully alive, and it's Pepe, and he's sticking out of Link's stomach. He explains that he's an alien baby that was placed in Link's stomach. Yes, that's right, folks. We did it. After all these years, the Muppets finally did Mpreg. The rest of the sketch is simply a series of jokes about Pepe being in Link's stomach. Some of them are pretty solid. Pepe's always a fun character to see.
Do you eat like a pig? Oh, you are a pig.
Although I will say, this part of the sketch feels almost like a veterinarian's hospital segment instead, with Pepe making some sort of pun, followed by the whole crew laughing at said bad pun.
What are you doing in my stomach?
I have no idea. I looked over and there was no womb.
Oh!
Other than this string of jokes, really not all that much else happens for the rest of the sketch. Since Pepe is alive, has been born, is, there, Strange Pork says that legally that means he is part of the crew, which means that he's going to have to start pulling his weight and doing a whole bunch of different tasks. This stresses out Pepe as Link, Strange Pork, and Piggy start listing off the things he has to do and how he can make money because he has to start paying them rent.
I want to go back into the disgusting Tommy.
And that's the joke the sketch ends on. Well, kind of, because the narrator returns telling us to tune in next time.
Tune in again next time when you'll hear the alien babies say...
Oh, by the way, I found your car keys.
Oh, good.
This is really strange, as much like the jokes with Pepe earlier, this is not something from Pigs in Space, this is something from Veterinarian's Hospital. While the two sketches do share a narrator, Veterinarian's Hospital always ended with that classic, tune in next time when you hear blah 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 say. Pigs in Space didn't do that until this segment, and I think that's just a really strange choice. It doesn't feel super distracting when you're watching the sketch, but I think that's because we all associate Veterinarian's Hospital and Pigs in Space so closely that, one taking from the other doesn't really make it feel out of place, but when you think about it, it is odd, right? Anyway, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not really a big fan of this sketch. While some of the jokes are pretty good, a lot of them are honestly inconsistent, changing topics super fast in a way that doesn't really work. For example, look at the big joke at the beginning regarding Piggy's dating experience. After she talks about how crazy Link's date was that ended up with the squid on his face, she says she's had worse dates. Link says, "Oh yeah, like you didn't want to," and Piggy explains that she was stranded on an asteroid with only one air supply, so she and Link had to share. This goes into a whole joke about the two of them having to share air supply and whether or not this counted as them kissing and how Piggy was hogging it. What does this have to do with her dating? It's stated that she and Link were not on a date, they were just in a scenario where they were out of air, so they had to put their mouths together to use the air tube. This same joke inconsistency is true for Pepe. Of course, one of the big jokes of the sketch is that he's popped out of Link's stomach and everybody is excited to have a new member of the crew, you know? It's a parody of the absolute horror that the chestbursters and Alien are. They're all excited, they get a new crewmate. But they aren't at first. They do act scared and weirded out, and then as soon as Pepe says he's a baby, Piggy's immediately like, "Oh, should we throw a baby shower?" They all switch so fast just to make the jokes work, and I feel like that ends up damaging the jokes and making them not work as well. It's inconsistent. And like I said before, the sketch is also just really gross. Obviously, your mileage is gonna vary on that regarding how you feel about body horror, gross out humor, etc. But I always just thought it was so gross to have Pepe there, sitting in Link's stomach the entire time, popping out, and Link is like touching him and cuddling him and hugging him, and then at the end, Pepe starts bouncing in and out of the hole in Link's stomach. So while this sketch does have some funny moments, this always stood out to me as weird, inconsistent, and pretty gross. Let's see if I like the next sketch more. The second episode of the Pigs in Space web series released 1 week later on December 16th, 2016, titled The Gravity of the Situation. This episode is longer at almost 5 minutes and is much larger in scale. We start in a recreation of the classic Swine Trek set, just like in the original show, but it's been updated with a brand new lighting palette, which is a lot darker and bluer, and honestly, it looks pretty nice. Piggy is floating outside in a spacesuit, and by spacesuit I mean an astronaut helmet and air tank and her regular clothing. Now you might think Piggy is outside doing some sort of dangerous mission, but in classic Pigs in Space fashion, it turns out she's just washing the windows. Link and Strangeberg had forced her to, and now want her to take out the space garbage. This already feels so much more like a classic Pigs in Space sketch. These guys just doing menial, stupid tasks in space that they force each other to do. Luckily for Piggy, Link has already taken out the space trash, having thrown it out the airlock yesterday. Unluckily for everybody, that means that the space trash has now had enough time to fully orbit around the planet that they're hovering over and is now coming at them at supersonic speed. Everyone starts to panic, and Strangeport consults the Swine Trek's computer, a character that wasn't featured in the original series and only shows up here. Its line, though, is really funny.
A computer! My calculations indicate you should all take out large life insurance policies in the next 30 seconds.
Link and Strangeport get on escape pods and escape the ship, leaving Piggy hovering outside, oblivious to what's going on. Garbage starts to collect around her, and then she receives a call from Strangeport.
Strangeport to First Mate Piggy. Your bravery and dedication will be remembered always.
You're abandoning me? If I survive this, I'm gonna jettison your heads from your necks!
Piggy gets onto the ship, and the computer tells her that they have 15 seconds until dramatic impact. Piggy realizes that, with the ship all in panic mode, the gravity has been completely shut off. But she's still on the ground.
Really? That joke's right before we die, huh?
Piggy accepts her fate, sitting down and reflecting on her only regret in life.
My one regret is that I shall never again see my true love, astronaut and all-around hunk, Matt Kowalski.
But then we see him, and it's Kermit in an astronaut costume.
Hey, glad to see ya.
The original Muppet Show would, every once in a while, feature some miscellaneous cameos from other Muppet Show characters, but not in the way this series does. Typically, it would just be other Muppet Show characters popping up. Here, we see both Pepe and Kermit play specific Pigs in Space themed characters, something I only really remember them doing on the original show when they had Gonzo play a Darth Vader parody. I was never a big fan of both this and the last episode, so heavily relying on cameos from other Muppet characters. As much as I love Pepe and Kermit, and they're both great in their respective sketches, and I think they add a lot to it, I always just wish that we had just seen the original Pigs in Space cast. Because honestly, with how much screen time Pepe and Kermit have, we don't get much of Link and Strangepork. Anyway, Kermit as Matt Kowaterski is definitely a highlight. Piggy asks him how he got there. She thought they drifted apart. He said it's a crazy story, but he's gonna get her out of there. Matt Kowaterski goes into a dramatic monologue asking Piggy what she really wants. If she wants to go, or if she wants to stay here with him.
It's just a matter of what you want to do now. And if you decide to go, you just gotta plant your feet and enjoy the ride.
Kermit's speech here is actually kind of beautiful, although he does take a dig at Piggy's weight halfway through.
I get it, you know. I mean, it's nice here. Quiet, and you weigh less.
But the sketch takes a twist as he begins to instruct her on how to escape.
You'll need this hat right here. Huh? The hat will act as a nose cone. Then you're gonna want to put on this special oxygen mask. And then, you're gonna want to cram yourself into this tiny bucket.
What?
Piggy asks if he's kidding, to which he says this.
Hey, would a panic, dream-induced space ghost of a dead lover lie?
Of course this is a hallucination, but you're telling me that the real Matt Kowaterski, the Pigs in Space version of Kermit, is dead? That's insane. And while I do think that's crazy and also pretty funny, I do want to once again say that this is inconsistent with an earlier joke, as Piggy simply said they drifted apart before. Not that he had died. Regardless, I still just think this is really funny. I'm gonna let that slide. Matt Kowaterski disappears, Piggy gets ready, and the computer starts a countdown. But when the countdown ends, the lights of the ship turn back on, and Link and Strangepork return, telling Piggy April Fools. Yeah, this whole thing was an elaborate prank.
Yeah, it's April Fool's Day. We just launched some garbage and sent the escape pods to Earth for some pizza. They'll be back in a jiffy.
And in easily my favorite joke in the episode, we learned that Matt Kowaterski was a puppet controlled by Link.
Yeah, watch. Hey, why don't you put your feet on the ground and enjoy the ride?
Piggy storms off, or I guess hops around in her bucket, off, as the narrator closes out the sketch, ending it with a string of questions asking what might happen next time, instead of the veterinarian-style closing we saw last time. And that's how the episode ends. Funnily enough, it's still not the same way the original Pigs in Space ended sketches, but I think it is an improvement over using a different sketch's ending. All in all, I think the gravity of the situation is genuinely a really great sketch, and a major improvement over the last episode. It has a distinct beginning, middle, and end point, setups and payoffs. A lot happens here, and I genuinely think it's easily one of the best Pigs in Space sketches ever. With an episode this good, you're probably wondering what came next. Unfortunately, nothing came next. Yeah, there were no other episodes of the Pigs in Space web show released. Just these two. But I said at the beginning of the video that Steve Whitmire confirmed that 4 or 5 episodes had been filmed. So, where are the other episodes? Well, there's something that I didn't tell you guys earlier. Remember how I said that these were supposed to be a Star Wars tie-in, but then they ended up releasing a year after Star Wars returned to theaters with nothing Star Wars related in sight in the sketches? Well, according to Steve Whitmire, the other 2 unreleased episodes were both Star Wars parodies. They would have featured several different Muppets playing Star Wars characters, with Kermit as Luke Flyswatter, Fozzie as Chew Waka Waka, Bunsen and Beaker as C-3PO and R2-D2, and Pepe the King Prawn as Prawn Solo. Gonzo was set to make a triumphant return as Darth Nader, and both Mark Hamill and J.J. Abrams, who directed The Force Awakens, were set to cameo. Whether or not Hamill would bring his cousin Luke Skywalker is unknown. But in the strangest twist, these sketches were cancelled because Lucasfilm was afraid that the Muppet parody would damage the brand. Yes, Lucasfilm was afraid of brand damage. Lucasfilm.
You have done that yourself!
Now, if you're a Star Wars fan, this story may sound a little familiar to you because there's a very famous canceled Star Wars project that suffered the same fate. A Star Wars parody series made by the Robot Chicken creators called Star Wars Detours was supposed to release around 2012-2013, and Disney canceled it after purchasing Lucasfilm.
Do you not get it, people? His name was Windu and he went out a window. Huh? That joke was hilarious and you all liked it.
This wasn't even the only Star Wars parody that Disney canceled after their purchase. From 2008 to 2013, a Star Wars dance show used to play annually at the Disney parks, featuring Star Wars characters absolutely getting down to pop songs of the time. If you've ever seen that meme of Boba Fett dancing to Lady Gaga's Telephone, that's where this comes from. The Cantina Band, for the record, also dances to Telephone, and they do the exact correct choreography from the part of the music video where she makes a sandwich full of poison and kills a whole restaurant of people. I gotta do a whole video on the Star Wars dance show. And screw it, I'm gonna do a whole video on the Telephone video too. That thing's insane.
You know what they say. Once you kill a cow, you gotta make a burger.
Shortly after they bought Lucasfilm, this show was replaced with a far more respectful one discussing Star Wars and its legacy and its impact. So clearly, Disney and Lucasfilm were trying to minimize things that parodied Star Wars at a time where they were trying to bring it back into the limelight. This is kind of strange, especially when you remember that Star Wars parodies were still coming out at this time, officially from Lucasfilm and Disney. There was the big Phineas and Ferb Star Wars special in 2014, and of course the Lego Star Wars specials releasing every single year. So if those were okay to release, and these Pigs in Space sketches weren't, what were they saying in these Pigs in Space sketches that was so offensive it would damage the brand? Did they make fun of Ben Quadranaros? Because if they made fun of Ben Quadranaros, then I completely get it. But other than that, I don't know what you could do. Taking all this information, I think we could speculate a pretty solid timeline of what happened with the Pigs in Space web series. They were going to bring back Pigs in Space with these big Star Wars parodies to celebrate the return of Star Wars to theaters, but Lucasfilm didn't like it, so they shelved the episodes. A year later, they ended up just dumping the other two they filmed, the non-Star Wars parody episodes, onto YouTube, billed it as New Pigs in Space, and that's all we got. So despite acting like they'd brought Pigs in Space back, they just put out these two episodes, and then it was over. Nothing else. This has all left the series in a really strange place, completely falling into obscurity despite being a pretty recent piece of Muppet media. And while it is now almost completely forgotten, it does include a pretty fascinating piece of Muppet history, all thanks to the show being delayed a year. You see, the series ended up releasing in December of 2016 instead of 2015. But do you know what happened to the Muppets in October of 2016? Steve Whitmire was fired from the role of Kermit, something made publicly known the following July, and he was replaced by Matt Vogel in August of 2017. This series released in December of 2016 because, again, of that one-year delay. Meaning that Steve Whitmire's performance of Kermit in the Gravity of the Situation episode was the final piece of Muppet media featuring Whitmire's Kermit to be released. And in a crazy piece of irony, he plays a version of Kermit named Matt, and at the end of the sketch, we see that Kermit was a puppet being controlled by somebody else. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching this episode of Muppet History Lesson. It has been super fun to once again break into the world of Pigs in Space. Let me know down in the comments what other Muppet topics you'd like to hear me discuss in the future. I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.